Hi there, welcome everyone, welcome to the live stream. I had a lot of requests for a prediction on the Irish election and Ireland going forward. So in response to that, we're going to be looking at some charts. Now, first of all, Ireland has quite an interesting, it's got actually 4 charts. The first is for, my favorite one actually, is for 1916, the time of the Easter Uprising, which is actually for April the 24th, 1916 at 12:37. But some Irish astrologers use the midday chart of 12. That's the one I'm using because I really like that one. Just to give you a flavor of it, it's here. So in case you want to freeze that and have a look later, I'll try and scan them and put them on my vlog for tomorrow, so on my blog, and leave a link to it so you can check out the charts, because as you know, I've got like a stuff going on. I haven't done it in the background. There's also a chart for 1922 when there was a kind of full independence of the parliament from Britain, and there's another chart for 1949 when the final ties to Britain were cut. But I read in Astrologers Weekly, and an astrologer there was saying that he liked the chart for January 21st, 1919, the time of the very first parliament, the sitting of the Dáil. So I actually quite like this chart as well. It worked better for me than the 1922 and the 1949 one. So I'll make reference to this one as well. And you can see that there, and I'll make some reference to it. So just to give you a flavor of what's going on in Irish politics, we have the 2 main parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Fine Gael is centre-right, Fianna Fáil centre-left. Basically, these parties used to command 85% of the vote back a few decades ago. That's been whittled down a lot now. And at the moment, Sinn Féin are leading in the polls with about 25%. Sinn Féin are having a very strong showing in the polls. Green Party is between about 7 and 10%, doing rather well. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are sort of battling it out after Sinn Féin. Really, they're both centrist parties. In effect, they are neoliberal globalist parties. You really can't put a cigarette paper between them. But throughout the history of the Dáil, it's usually been either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael who have had the power. In Ireland, what's really interesting as well, as you have a very large contingent of independent MPs. So those proportional representation, the independents make up a large proportion of the Dáil. The Irish Labour Party is not what it was. It's gone into decline. There's a Social Democrat Party on the rise, but it's still fairly small. So the biggest players in this election are going to be Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and the Greens. And so we're going to be looking at that now. Varadkar was never elected, similar to how we have in the UK. The leader of the party becomes the Prime Minister, similar to Boris Johnson when he took over from Theresa May. There initially wasn't an election, so Boris wasn't elected. In a similar way, Éanna Kelly was the elected leader of Fine Gael, but there was a kind of internal putsch, and Leo Varadkar took over as the leader of Fine Gael. This is the first election he's actually facing, and he's very, very nervous, already talking that it'll be very difficult to form a government, which is what I think is going to happen. And and he, of course, Leo Varadkar is Fine Gael. So my prediction is that the Fianna Fáil is going to come out ahead in this election. Sinn Féin on standing in all the constituencies or all the regions, and therefore they won't be able to command a majority. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael currently have a supply and confidence arrangement. So if Fianna Fáil come out with the most votes, they have said that there's no circumstances in which they'll form an alliance with Sinn Féin, but we know that's exactly what SOE said in Spain about them and Podemos, and they have formed an alliance. So you never know what might happen. They might just form an alliance with Sinn Féin. Hi, Vicky. So what I think about Sinn Féin is they are drawing most of their support from young people and from Dubliners and people in the main cities. So their support base is very similar to what you'd see with Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders, that kind of thing. It's young people, progressives. I'd say Sinn Féin, like the SNP, and I've said it before, are a fake nationalist movement, very similar to the Catalan movement. They're not really about Irish nationalism. They are open borders, globalist parties, more on the far left communist side. So Sinn Féin, of course, are attracting a lot of young voters, like we've said, but it won't be enough to carry them right over the line, and it's dubious whether the other parties will work with them. What's most likely is that Fianna Fáil will work with the independents, who tend to vote on their own constituency issues, but they could vote on an ad hoc basis, and perhaps they'll also replicate another supply and exchange and confidence with Fine Gael, as has been happening. But I do feel that it's going to be very, very unstable. Hi, Anthony. Can't watch at the Mo. We'll catch up. Thanks for doing. Absolute pleasure. I mean, the great thing about this is you can catch up whenever you want to. So I'd first like to look at the chart for April 24th, 1916. What's interesting about that is we have Sun in Taurus on a midheaven, in Taurus with Leo rising. So Sun being the ruling planet because it's Leo rising, Sun on the midheaven in Taurus. And right now we have transiting Uranus sitting right there on the midheaven and on the Sun. There you can see, because as you know, Uranus is in the early degrees of Taurus and it's sitting there on the Sun, which indicates a change of leadership, which I think is why Leo Varadkar will be getting his marching orders. Although in his chart, he's soon going to be assuming a much more powerful role, maybe 18 months hence. So obviously he's going to fulfill the ambition he's always had of getting a key role in the EU, obviously as a reward for playing hardball with Brexit. Why I like this chart for Ireland is across the ascendant, you see, it is the chart for the Easter uprising. And we have across the ascendant in Leo, we've got Mars on 16 degrees of Leo, opposite Uranus, 19 degrees of Aquarius, Easter rebellion. And there we have Mars opposite Aquarius across the ascendant, descendant. What fantastic symbolism for rebellion, for an uprising, for breaking free, seizing control of their own destiny, sort of breaking free of their British masters, independence. Wow, I think that's incredible symbolism, which is why I think this chart works. But if you look, something's falling down there. But if you have a look even at the chart for January the 21st, 1919, you'll see again replicated is Mars conjunct Uranus in the ninth house. So that theme runs through to the next chart. And you often see this when a country has multiple charts. You see themes running through. So that whole Mars conjunct Uranus thing runs through. And I'm going to be coming back to that because it's quite important. So what else I liked about this chart is we know that with what do you associate with Ireland? Roman Catholicism, you know, the whole religion. And here we have Neptune in the 12th house, which I think gives the whole country its sense of spirituality, that strong link they've always had. Although it's changing with a lot of young people, as you saw with the visit of the Pope, hardly anyone really even coming there. I really connect with Ireland as a tourist country because there you've got that warmth, the friendliness, the musicality, the hospitality. Really, I've always felt that Ireland is a tourist country because of that. You know, it's just, Taurus is such a friendly, laid back, easygoing, loves life, loves, you know, kind of food, drinking, and being merry. That's very much part of the Irish culture. You've got Moon in Capricorn, hence the struggle, the inherent struggle. I mean, Ireland went from being ruled by the British to kind of being ruled over by the Roman Catholic Church, then ruled over by the EU. They've always had this kind of struggle to find their own feet, to find their own identity. But they've been kind of doing it lately with the low corporate tax rate attracting all Googles and Facebooks and YouTubes to base them, Twitter, I think, to base themselves in Ireland. And they've had, you know, a surge from that. Talking about religion, we do have Jupiter in its own house, the ninth house in Aries, which again emphasizes to me the great interest in religion, the connection with the Roman Catholic Church that they've had. Mercury in Taurus in the 10th. Come on, Oscar Wilde. The Irish are fantastic and known for their literature, for having the gift of the Blarney Stone, you know, for being great orators, wonderful with the literature. It's one of the things we all know Ireland for, being such expressive people and just having such a gift with language. So I think it really makes sense that we've got Mercury in Taurus because very pleasing in the way they speak. So many people love the Irish accent, and Mercury in Taurus is associated with having a beautiful presentation speaking voice. There you go. And Mars in the 12th. Yeah, I do feel that Ireland haven't discovered their power yet. And often with Mars in the 12th, you find a country that's often oppressed, bullied, just waiting to find its own power and not quite aware of the power it has, waiting to discover that. So what we have in this house, in terms of the transits, we have transiting Uranus square Venus, Venus being in the 11th house. And I think the fact that Neptune's affecting Venus in the 11th indicates this great indecision that they're going into, where for the first time in the parliament, they've got a key big player that isn't Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, and that's going to be Sinn Féin, and that's going to generate a lot of stability, uncertainty, as demonstrated by Neptune in terms of the Doyle. We already talked about Uranus conjunct Sun midheaven, indicating a change of leadership, a different party. I think Fianna Fáil will be the main party. We also have Pluto approaching a conjunction with the Moon, which is at the end of Capricorn, and so that also indicates to me something bubbling under the surface. But I'm going to come to that just now. In terms of the solar arcs, we have solar arc Pluto is square Saturn. Saturn rules your 6th house, and Saturn is in the 11th. So again, we have this change and uncertainty in terms of their parliament, represented by the 11th. So that's the rise of Sinn Féin. Interesting in terms of their armed forces. I think Ireland are going to be key to the EU's ambitions for an army and navy, and we might start hearing rumblings that they're going to have a major naval base in Ireland. We also have solar arc Venus square Pluto. That's the solar arc there. Again, it's activating Pluto in the 11th, big changes in the dial. But what that also said to me was there was a link between that and Fianna Fáil getting into power. There was also a link to that in 1976 when they had the first mosque. So I think we might see a link to that with a lot more Muslim MPs, particularly independents. And that could be, obviously in the American Congress, there was quite a lot of talk when the members of the squad, is it Ilhan Omar, and there's another Muslim congressperson. So we could start seeing our first Muslim representatives in the Dáil coming through. If there aren't any, there could be a surge, particularly of women, and I think that's represented by that. To go and have a look at the other chart for Jan 21, 1919, here we have Cancer ascendant with Moon in the 4th house. I think that also kind of encapsulates how important tourism is for Ireland, and Cancer, the whole hospitality, being very welcoming, the Moon in the 4th house, that homely feeling, and the fact that although the Irish are a diaspora really spread all around the world, they still very strongly see Ireland as their home. It's a great deal of patriotism. I mean, of all the nations in the world, the Irish really identify very, very strongly with their identity as Irish, and I think that's perfectly portrayed there with your Moon ruling the ascendant based there in the 4th. Also that there's a rural Ireland is very important to the tourism industry, and I think when people think of Ireland, they think of rural Ireland, don't they? And Moon in the 4th is also a lot about writing, so here again we have the theme of literature. Moon is in Libra. Ireland stayed neutral in World War II. So it's a country that likes to stay neutral. That's reflected by that. I didn't particularly like that Sun was in Aquarius, because I don't think Sun in Aquarius really says anything to my mind about Ireland at all. But again, as I said, it's got Mars conjunct Uranus, which beautifully encapsulates that spirit of rebellion, of seeking their independence that we saw in the first chart. Venus there is in Aquarius in the 8th house, and it's opposite Neptune. I think Neptune in the 2nd house. I think that indicates the bailouts, the problems they've had economically, going fairly well at the moment, but it's certainly been up and down. Neptune there in the 2nd, similar to the UK, which has Neptune in the 2nd, and of course both island nations, key asset. 2nd house is always asset, so a key asset for UK and Ireland is their coastline and all the resources that they have by virtue of that. I talked about how, you can't look at Ireland without thinking of the influence of the Catholic Church. And here in the 12th house, we have Jupiter conjunct Pluto in Cancer, which it said to me dogma. And I think Ireland has always been kind of under some sort of dogma of the Catholic Church. Then it's the dogma of the EU, and now it's kind of progressive dogma. So in this particular chart, we've got transiting Uranus is square Neptune, and Neptune is ruling the 10th house. So again, that rule, change of leader. We've also got, very interestingly, Venus is square the Saturn opposite Mars Uranus conjunction. So, of course, there we've got Saturn sitting in the third house opposite your Mars-Uranus conjunction, which I talked about quite a lot in the ninth house, and Venus is setting off that natal square. Why that's important to me is because people have been saying that since Brexit, Ireland have almost gone the other way. So while we have this theme going on in Europe and in America where people are going for populist parties and looking for something different, Ireland are going along the same course as Spain. So instead of looking to the right, well, Spain are looking a bit to the right in terms of Vox, but they've elected a far-left government. Ireland are also heading in that direction of going towards the far left. And so Sinn Féin is also could be classified as a kind of populist party, hence their surge is because people are sick of centrist politics represented by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and that's why they're going over to Sinn Féin, and that's the surge. So Ireland, of course, also seeing populism, but embracing populism of the left. Now, why I think it's important that the Mars-Uranus conjunction is activated in this other chart is because that represented the Easter Uprising. And one of the important things people have been saying is because of Brexit, what Ireland have done, they've gone the opposite direction. And even young people who don't know much about the Troubles, who weren't even born during them or were too young to remember them, suddenly they're talking about the Troubles, they're talking about the colonialism. There's a surge of anti-British feeling that's been stirred up by Brexit. And when I looked at what Jupiter in Capricorn meant in history, it coincides with many key times in the Troubles or with the IRA. And what did we see in the papers this morning? There was actually a plot by the IRA, a branch of the IRA, or what they call the new IRA or whatever, to blow up there were explosives, viable explosive devices on a truck, and they were going to blow up a ferry on Brexit Day. Fortunately, it was thwarted by the police, but it does speak to the uptick in possible terrorism that I talked about on another vlog. I also talked about the Pluto-Saturn. Was it Pluto? Yes, I talked about. Let's have a look where it was. Pluto-Saturn. Yes, in the 1919 chart, Saturn rules the descendant, and the Saturn opposite Uranus Mars is activated, and that indicated to me that there would be problems with a major partner, and we are Ireland's major trade partner. We are really, as another English-speaking nation, and being in such close proximity to them, almost like a sister country, but I see a great deal of animosity developing between the UK and Ireland, and that's reflected in all the parties because Leo Varadkar has had broad support across Ireland for the tough stance he's taken towards the UK Brexit. And I see relations between Ireland and Brexit deteriorating further. And it's definitely shown up in the chart due to the kind of adverse aspects that are going on to the descendant. And as I say, we're kind of their major partner. So I'd just like to end this by talking briefly about, these were the papers that we'd talk about just now. Okay. For example, if we go back in history and have a look at the times when Jupiter was in Capricorn, there are some key times in terms of the IRA. So let's see what this date, the pages got all mixed up as they fell down. In 1949, the Provisional Irish Republican Army kidnapped Jean McConville in Belfast. That was one incident. We had July 31, the Troubles, Northern Ireland. There was Operation Motorman, where the British Army began to regain control of no-go areas established by the Irish Republican paramilitaries in Belfast, in Derry, and in Newry. There was the Claudy bombing, which was called Bloody Monday. That was at 10 a.m. 3 car bombs in Claudy, County Londonderry, killed 9 people, and became public knowledge only in 2010 that a local Catholic priest was an IRA officer believed to have been involved in those bombings, but his role was covered up by all the authorities. And there was also Bloody Friday when Jupiter was in Capricorn, and that was when 22 bombs planted by the Provisional IRA exploded in Belfast, Northern Ireland, 9 people being killed and 130 seriously injured. In March 2014, Sinn Féin's Jerry Adam and 3 others are seriously injured in a gun attack by the Ulster Volunteer Force. So again, you see more things going on with the IRA. October the 12th, the Provisional Irish Republican Army attempts to assassinate Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and the British cabinet in the Brighton hotel bombing. So there you go. That's quite a significant event in terms of IRA history in the UK, trying to kill Maggie Thatcher. And what else did we have? It was also back March 24th. There was in 1972, the British government announces the prorogation of the Parliament of Northern Ireland and the introduction of direct rule of Northern Ireland after the Unionist government refused to cede security powers. So another big event there to do with the IRA. There were anti-British riots taking place throughout Ireland. This is February 1972. The British embassy in Dublin is burned to the ground, as are several British-owned businesses. February the 22nd, the Aldershot bombing, an official IRA bomb kills 7 in Aldershot, England. So you see what I mean. Then we had, this is back to 1996, I think, June 15th in Manchester, a massive IRA bomb injures over 200 people and devastates a large part of the Arndale shopping centre in Manchester. That was one of the last significant IRA bombs we had on the mainland. And was there anything else? I think that covers all the similarities between kind of major attacks by the IRA and Jupiter in Capricorn. So what do I see? I think that Leo Varadkar will lose this election, that Fianna Fáil will come to prominence. They'll have great difficulty in establishing government and being able to rule. I think that will continue during the next 2 years. There'll be a lot of problems just forming coalitions and getting day-to-day decision-making done because it's so fractured and so fragmented throughout the Dáil. And I think the anti-British feeling will continue among all parties, but it's going to be particularly pushed with Sinn Féin taking up greater proportion of the Dáil. So, Guy, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me read some of your comments. EU army coming, yes, and I think Ireland's going to be key in terms of their navy. I like the Ireland First Party with journalist Gemma. Gemma was amazing. I'm really sorry that she's been thrown off YouTube, because she did some wonderful lives and she was introducing us to some fascinating insights going on in Ireland. But yes, she has got her anti-corruption Ireland party, and she's still rather small, but hopefully she can get some traction. I think they really need parties on the proper right, because as we've said, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael just two cheeks of the same butt, as George Galloway would say. One of the best mystics was Irish, Joseph Murray. Yes, Irish and the Scottish, extremely psychic. They have great vision. They're very in tune, and lots of good psychics in Scotland and Ireland. They seem to have 3 parties with slightly different ways to commit cultural suicide. Yeah, I think all their parties are on the progressive globalist front. Sinn Féin the most so, but the others are absolutely in with it. I don't think that Fine Gael, of which Varadkar is currently head, is really a centre-right party at all. They're just on that same hymn sheet. It's just neoliberalism, globalism, open borders, blah, 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 as you guys would have heard Gemma talk about. They hate the British, but they love mass immigration. Yeah, I mean, go figure. Go figure. But they will be getting more of that. And yes, their dislike for the British is going to increase. I think they're using the whole Brexit thing to stir up animosity towards the British. And I just don't see why. I mean, I'll just end on this point, is they'll say the British are this, the British are that. They'll call us every name in the book because we don't want to be part of the EU. But funny, Norwegians have voted consistently not to join the EU. And yet Norway is one of the most liberal, progressive, open-minded, open everything, non-racist countries. And no one's throwing accusations at Norway just because they don't want to join, are they? It's all just a lot of nonsense. But yes, I've even noticed it myself on Facebook, and that Irish people have got their backs up. I think they think, the British think they're too good for the EU. They still harking back to the colonial past. They don't want to join in with the others because they always want to do their own thing. I think there's that kind of attitude. And as I said, definitely even young people now are beginning to hark back to colonialism, the troubles, and just get all stirred up about all things British when there's absolutely no need for them. So I do see for Britain increasingly difficult relations with Ireland and more extremism stemming out of there. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. We'll see what happens in the elections tomorrow. I'm not sure how fast results come out, but I hope you enjoyed the 2 charts that I did and the reading, and see you all soon.